Hello everyone. So today we are going to discuss chapter price elasticity. We can divide this chapter into two parts that are price elasticity of demand and price elasticity of supply. Okay. So now let's first talk about the price elasticity of demand, which we can also call as PED. Okay, so earlier we discussed that the law of demand stated that when you decrease the price of the product so that its quantity demanded will increase, and when you increase the price of the product so its quantity demanded will decrease. So now here we will discuss that what is the responsiveness of this change, that like if you increase the price of the product, then by how much amount the quantity demanded will fall, and vice versa, if you decrease the price, then how much will the quantity demanded will increase. So the relativity of the price and the quantity demanded is measured by the PED, or price elasticity of demand. So by definition, PED measures the degree of responsiveness of quantity demanded for a product following change in its price. So if there is a price change and which led to a very small or very minor change in the quantity demanded, then it is called an inelastic demand. Or on the other hand, the there is a if there is a small change in price which lead to a bigger change in the quantity demanded, then the PED is said to be elastic. Now, how to calculate the PED? So the formula for calculating the PED is percentage change in quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in price. So here we can see that for this cinema, the price increased from $10 to $11. So now we can calculate the percentage change in price. So that is 10% increase in the price, and which led to a demand falling from 3,500 to 3,325. So there is a 5% decrease in the demand for the cinema. So we can say that the PED is minus 0.5, which means percentage change in price is 10% and percentage in quantity demanded is 5%. So 10 divided by 5 is minus 2%. So 5 divided by 10 is equal to 0.5. Here you can see that there is a negative symbol. So the negative sign over here denotes that there is an inverse relation between the price and the quantity demanded for the product. So now interpreting the value of this minus 0.5. So here it's written that cinema ticket example suggests that the demand for the ticket price is inelastic. Why? When you increase the price by 10%, so the quantity demanded fall by 5%, which means that the change in price is greater than the change in the quantity demanded, which means that numerator is small and the denominator is larger, which led to a less than 1 PED. So whenever your PED is less than 1, so this means that the product is price inelastic. On the other hand, if your product is if the PED of your product is greater than 1, this will show that the PED of the product is elastic, or we can also say that your product is price elastic. Now, the demand curve for the inelastic goods will be a negative slope demand curve. That's how the demand curve is, but there will be steep slope. It will be a steep demand curve. And on the other hand, the demand curve for the elastic goods will be a gentle demand curve. Now there are special cases where your product might be perfectly priced inelastic, which means that it will be a graph will be your parallel to your vertical axis. So this means that whenever there is a perfect price inelastic good, so there will be no substitute for such a product. So supplier can charge whatever price they like. Now another circumstance might be that the product is perfectly price elastic, which is the opposite of perfect inelastic. So here the demand curve is horizontal, which means that it is parallel to the horizontal axis. So this type of demand curve will mean that the customers switch to buying other substitute products if suppliers raise their price. So if you increase the price from P0 to anywhere above, so there will be no demand at all. So this means that it has a lot of substitutes. This product has perfect substitute. when a good is price elastic, it has a PED of greater than 1, and when the product is inelastic, it has a PED of less than 1. However, if there is a unitary price elasticity, which means that the PED of the product is equals to 1, which means that if you increase the price by 50%, so its quantity demanded will increase by 50%, which means that numerator is equals to your denominator. For that circumstances, your demand curve will be like this as shown in the diagram over here, which means that if you increase the price from P1 to P2, there will be an equal change in the quantity demanded, as quantity demanded will fall from Q1 to Q2. Now, the determinants of the PED. So first determinant for the PED is substitution. Okay, so substitution says that whenever you have a higher number of substitutes, so the PED of your product will be higher. And on the contrary, if your substitutes are less, then you will have a lesser PED, which means your PED will be inelastic. So this is because if a good has a lot of substitutes, so if you increase the price of that good, the customers will shift to their competitors, to the substitutes. This will lead to a high or a elastic PD for that good. Now, income is another very important factor, that how much proportion of the income are you spending on that product. So if your proportion of on that product is very small, if you are spending your 0.0001% on a matchstick, so if the price of the matchstick increase from rupees 1 to rupees 2 or rupees 2 to rupees 3, there you will not go towards any other substitute, or you will not think a lot for that. You will just pick up these type of items, because of your income proportion which is going towards that product is very minimal. So so the elasticity of such products will be inelastic, because if you increase their prices, your quantity demanded will not change a lot. So again, coming back to the formula, your denominator will be greater and your numerator will be smaller. So this will lead to a PED of less than 1. Now, if the good is a necessity, which means that if you increase the price of a necessity like wheat, which you make bread with, so for such products, the price elasticity will be inelastic. Why? Because if you increase or decrease such the price of such goods, you are still going to buy that because you need such products to survive. That is your necessity. So the necessity items have a inelastic price elasticity of demand. Okay, now these are some other factors as well, so you can just have a go through them. Now another very important thing to know is that whenever there is a price change, now another very important thing to note is that when you increase price for an inelastic good, so the revenue for the supplier will rise, and for the unitary product there will be no change in revenue, and for the elastic product the revenue will fall. Now let's discuss this with example. So for example, in an inelastic good, when you increase the price of the product which has an inelastic demand, so customers will still buy your product, and the percentage change in price will be greater than the percentage change in quantity demanded. So for such circumstances, your revenue will rise because customers will not go towards the other substitutes or other competitors, but they still will buy your product, as there are no major competitors of such products which have a low elasticity. So now unitary, this is again an assumption that it does not really exist in the real world, but there will be no change in the revenues if you increase the price for goods with unitary price elasticity of demand. Now elasticity. Now if the product is elastic, so if you increase the price, the revenue for the suppliers will fall. Now the reason for this is that if you increase the price, so your customers will quickly shift towards the competitors in case of the elastic goods, because elastic products have high number of substitutes or competitors available. So your revenue will fall as your sales will decrease because customers are switching towards the competitors. Okay, so if you reduce the price for your goods for an inelastic good, so again, it's very self-explanatory that why the revenue will fall. It is because customers are still with you and they are not going towards the competitor, but you reduce your price, so your revenue will fall. Now, in case of elasticity, if you reduce the price, so competitors will shift from substitute towards your product, which will increase your price, which will increase your revenue. And again, for unitary, there will be no change in the revenues. Now let's come towards the uses of the price elasticity of demand. So it helps firms to make pricing decisions, like as earlier I showed you the table. So this can help supplier to identify whether he can increase the price or decrease the price regarding based on that their price, what is the PD of their product. Now another use of price elasticity of demand is that they can predict the impact of falling change in the exchange rate. For instance, firms that rely on export will generally benefit from lower exchange rates and thus will become more price competitive. So this obviously assume that the PED of your export is elastic. Another thing is that the supplier can also see that the increase in the sales tax can be passed on to the consumers or not. So for goods which are highly inelastic, so the if the sales tax increases, so the burden on consumers will increase. On the other hand, if the good is elastic, so the increase in sales tax will pass more burden to the producer compared to the seller. So this also help the sellers to identify whether the burden can be shifted towards the consumers or not when there is an increase in the sales tax.